Hello and welcome to Beachao, and I have just come back from the MG Windsor event, and there is a lot to talk about over here. While MG over here has tried to address some of the things which people are not very favorable with EVs, they have also created a ton of questions and a ton of more confusion, which I am hoping to sort out a lot for you in this video. So the major concern with a lot of people regarding EVs is the cost versus the spaciousness and the features that they get, where most people want to actually buy a larger car which has got more space, which has got more features, which has got more comfort, but at the price of an ICE vehicle. Now, as you can see, the price for an EV is a lot different. If the ICE vehicle is, let's say, about 12 lakh rupees, then the EV of the same car with the same specs and features would cost anywhere between 16 to 18 lakh rupees. So now, as most of you already must be knowing, the Windsor comes at a price of 9.99 lakh rupees. This is not an introductory price which is going to increase later. This is the price which the car is going to be starting at, and from there on it's got three variants which are going to be priced slightly higher and higher depending on the feature set that you get with the car. But there is a catch behind this price which we will come to a little later. Now, on the outside, the Windsor actually has a lot of features which are signature to MG, where it has a lot of prominent branding that says or shouts out that it's an MG. For example, with this car you have a glowing logo, then you have a full daytime running light that goes from the one side of the car to the other, and then the headlights are actually placed lower like how it is in most of the cars in this segment nowadays. So with the Windsor, MG is trying to address the growing part of the Indian market segment where people want cars that drive, handle and have the comfort of a sedan, while at the same time have the luxury or the space inside of an SUV. And they are calling this the CUV, which in their terms means a crossover utility vehicle. We have seen such offerings from other cars very lately, which is, for example, the Tata Curve or the Citroën Basalt, and the Windsor kind of puts itself in that very segment, albeit only having a electric version, a battery powered version of the car. On the outside, it also has decent looking diamond cut wheels. Then it also has these very flush door handles that sit right with the body of the car. But overall, when you look at it from the outside, it is kind of premium, and that feeling of premiumness even increases the minute you go inside the car. On the top end model, you get a massive panoramic roof which stretches from the front all the way till the back. Then as standard, you get a 15.6 inch touchscreen, which is one of the largest that you've seen in this segment. And then also on the inside, it has some of the most unique seats that I've ever seen in any car, not just this segment but any car. The seats, actually, when you sit on them, they feel like proper sofas, like one of those sofas where you actually sink inside and you get like this very comfortable feel where you're sitting like on a pillow. That's the kind of feel you get within these seats, which also, by the way, have some incredible recline angles. Like, for example, the rear seat can actually be reclined at 136 degrees. Now, how comfortable these seats remain to be for a very long period of driving, that is something we need to see as the car gets tested out more and it's out there in the market. But first impressions, those ventilated seats are super cushiony. They almost feel like a nice luxurious sofa which you have now in the car. But for the most purpose and intent that this car has been designed for, which is going to be in and around the city and short distances here and there, I think those seats are going to be really comfortable. And other features like wireless charging, voice recognition and ambient lighting, which are kind of standard in a lot of cars as well, are also over here with the Windsor. Coming to the battery tech, the Windsor EV is again pretty good, where it has a 38 kilowatt hour battery pack which can be charged at a maximum capacity of 45 kilowatts, which means that a 0 to 80% charge will take you around 55 minutes. And on 100% charge, you will get a claimed 331 kilometers of range. That said though, the 136 PS of power or 134 bhp is actually quite good. It's quite impressive, but we still don't know the 0 to 100 km per hour because that is something which MG has not disclosed as of yet. Now here's the complicated part. The 9.9 lakh rupees that you pay upfront or you do an EMI for your Windsor is going to buy you the car alone, which does not include the cost of the battery. Because what MG says is that they will be not selling you the battery, but they will actually be leasing out or renting out the battery in a subscription model where you pay as you drive. So what that means is basically you are going to be paying 3.5 rupees per kilometer of whatever you have driven. Now this sounds very complicated because it is, and that's the reason why I have had to come across multiple different scenarios to sort of wrap my head around how this will work for different type of people. Let's say if you're a person who is fine with selling their car after 3 years where you always upgrade, or if you're somebody who likes to keep their car long term, or if you're somebody who has a particular kilometer range after which you sell the car, let's say after 1,00,000 kilometers or 1.5 lakh kilometers. So I am trying to understand all these different situations and trying to understand how this pricing model is going to affect you if you slot into any one of these categories or criterias. Okay, so let me take you through this step by step of all the scenarios that I've created, and you let me know if this makes any sense to you and which segment or which scenario do you probably find yourself fitting in. So let's say the first scenario is where you drive your car up to 1 lakh kilometer and then you start planning to sell it off. You'll be paying MG 3.5 rupees per kilometer, which comes to 3,50,000 rupees, which is the subscription cost of the battery. Now in all these situations, what I have done is to keep it simple, calculated the cost of charging on a home charger, because most of the people, when you have like a 300 kilometer 400 kilometer range EV, are going to be charging at home unless you are in an emergency or you need battery range extensions where, let's say, you're doing more than 300, 400, 500 kilometers, but those situations aren't very often. So the most primary and common situation for most of the guys is where they'll be charging at home. So when you're charging at home, you're paying roughly around 9 rupees per kilowatt of energy used, or 9 rupees per unit of energy used. And in that case, a full charge is going to be 9 rupees into 38 kilowatts, which is 342 rupees. Now 342 rupees will give you a claimed range of 331 kilometers. And if you just deduct it on an average for most of the EVs, not just for the MG, this comes to 1 rupee per kilometer. So let's say you've driven 1 lakh kilometers. So that is going to be an additional charging cost of 1 lakh rupees. So that comes to a total of 4,50,000 rupees for driving the car for 1 lakh kilometers, which includes the cost of charging and the cost of subscription which you have to give MG. Now let's say you drive 1.5 lakh kilometers. Now, the more you drive, what I have noticed is the more money you will be paying MG, and it's basically going to be working out a lot more costly for you. So for 1.5 lakh kilometers, you will be paying 5,25,000 rupees just as the subscription fee at 3 rupees 50 paisa per kilometer. Then 1 rupee charging cost per kilometer will cost you 1.5 lakh rupees for just the charging part. So that brings the total cost to 6,75,000 rupees. Adding this to the cost of your car, you will get 16,75,000 as your total cost of ownership of this car. Now what MG is also doing is giving you an option to sell them the Windsor EV back, where they are promising you a 60% assured resale value after 3 years. So let's do a general calculation. Now, according to a lot of surveys which I found on the internet, according to a lot of people who use their cars, an average Indian drives anywhere around 10 to 15,000 kilometers in a year. Now, there are obviously going to be people which drive a lot more. There are going to be people which drive maybe a little less also. So I want to take an average which is, let's say, around 25,000 kilometers, which is sort of slightly on the higher side. So let's say if you're using the car a lot, let's say in that situation, you drive 25,000 kilometers per year, which gets you to about 75,000 kilometers driven in 3 years. Now let's see how those calculations work out in this regard. So in that situation, 60% of your value, which is 60% of 10 lakhs, is what's going to be retained after 3 years. So 6 lakh rupees is what you get back. So your cost of owning the vehicle, or let's say the loss which you've taken on owning that vehicle, is 4 lakh rupees. Add to that the rental of the battery, which is 75,000 kilometers into 3 rupees 50 paisa, comes to 2,62,000 rupees. And then you add 1 rupee per kilometer for charging, that's 75,000 rupees extra. So in this case, the total ownership or the total cost to you will come to 2,62,000 plus 75,000 plus 4 lakh rupees, which comes to 7,37,000. Now let's take a different scenario where we are considering a car which is of the same size with the same kind of features, which would be maybe about 15 or 16 lakh rupees, and we are paying outright for that car. So let's say you pay outright 15 lakh rupees and you pay the entire amount for the car as well as the battery, like the standard model that's out there. Now in this case, you'll again have a running cost of 1 rupees per kilometer. So 75,000 rupees is your charging cost for the car. But apart from that, you have no other cost. And now let's say for this car, instead of 60% of your resale value, you only get 50%. So 7.5 lakh rupees straight off a loss to you after you sell the car after 3 years. So that's 7,50,000 rupees, which is the value which you've lost, plus about 75,000 rupees which you have paid for charging. So the total ownership cost to you in this case will come to 8,25,000, which is about 88,000 rupees more compared to what you would pay MG for their subscription model. Now let's consider another case where you're just buying a EV because you want to do in the city. Like for example, me, I have a Tiago EV. I bought it purely to drive around city. Although I've made some stupid, unreasonable plans with it, where I drove it once to Bangalore, then once I drove it to Goa. The Bangalore drive took me 7 or 8 charges. I don't even remember, but it was hell. And I do not recommend anyone to do it. Regardless, most of people don't do that, and even I don't do that. So most of the times, the Tiago which I have, I use it to drive daily in the city, where I do anywhere between 60 to 100, 120 kilometers on a daily basis. So what I'm trying to do here is, I'm trying to fit a car in the same budget as the Windsor EV. So the Windsor EV is 10 lakh rupees. Let's say I buy a car which is another 10 lakh rupees. So the price you're paying either by EMI or upfront is the same, which is approximately 10 lakh rupees. Now for the 10 lakh rupee car, let's say after 3 years, you have a depreciation of 50%. So the value that's coming back to you is 5 lakh rupees, and you've lost 5 lakh rupees in the last 3 years as a cost to your car or as a value of your car. Now, for driving those 75,000 kilometers, you will be paying another 75,000, 1 rupee per kilometer. So the cost which comes to you at the end of 3 years is 5,75,000. Now, for the final scenario, let's imagine that you drive the Windsor for about 15,000 kilometers per year and round it off to about 50,000 kilometers driven in total 3 years. In that case, at 3 rupees 50 paisa per kilometer, you will be paying MG 1,75,000 for the battery rental and another 50,000 rupees for the charging of the vehicle, which comes to 2,25,000 total. Combine that with the 4 lakh rupees that you've lost on the value of the car, your total cost of ownership will be 6,25,000 rupees. Now, when you consider this same scenario with a car which you have bought outright, you're losing 7.5 lakh rupees on the value of the car, while at the same time paying 50,000 rupees for charging, which brings your cost of ownership to 8 lakh rupees. So, there is a huge difference when it comes to driving the car what usually people drive, which is about 15,000 kilometers per year or about 45 to 50,000 kilometers in 3 years. And in these kind of scenarios, basically, the Windsor makes so much of sense. So if you consider your ownership of the MG Windsor in this very strict 3-year period, where you're getting 60% of the value of the car still to you, and with a kilometers driven of about 15,000 kilometers per year to anywhere around 25,000 kilometers per year, this car is definitely making a ton of sense. After that, things might be a little different, because after 3 years, it's very difficult to say how MG or the dealer would actually value your car, how he will value the cost of the battery or the value of the battery, and how he will overall consider the resale value of the car. But for this particular 3-year period or this bracket, the MG Windsor makes a ton of sense when you want to buy an EV which is upmarket, which has got tons of features, it's got a very decent amount of range also, and when you give it back to the company, you're actually saving up on a ton of money compared to an EV of the same value which you buy outright. And if you're someone who's looking to run your car down to the ground, let's say you drive it 1 lakh kilometers, 2 lakh kilometers, basically you just want to drive the car till the time its life is over, then I believe then most probably the subscription model could be more expensive to you, because the more you drive, the more you're paying for that battery, regardless if that battery is working, if it's going to go bad, if it needs a service, whatever it is, it's still costing you more. Because remember, a lot of companies out there now are giving you a 7-8 year warranty, 1.5 lakh kilometer warranty on their batteries. So realistically, most people 7 to 8 years, 9 years, I don't think people drive their car more than that. So in any which ways, in a way, your battery is covered for its lifetime that it is going to be with you. Then some weird questions pop to my mind as well. Like for example, what if someone buys the Windsor EV and accepts the subscription plan and never actually shows up to pay for it, just takes the car and runs away? he's paying for the car for 9.5, 10 lakh rupees, and then he never pays for the subscription. What in that case? Probably if MG has a plan where they've, like maybe they lock the car or they, disable the features. I don't know, but that is something which hopefully nobody finds out, and hopefully MG also doesn't find out from their customers. But that maybe that is also a problem, or that is also a situation where people could take advantage, or maybe or not, I'm not sure. Anyways, that was my whole understanding of this whole battery as a service strategy with MG is bringing down with the new Windsor EV. Tell me, what are your thoughts on this subscription model? Where do you fit in these segments and categories? And would you in general go for something which is like a battery as a subscription service, or would you just plain outright buy the car? What would your preference be? Let me know down in the comment section. Thank you once again for watching this video. I'm going to see you in the next one. Till then, ciao.